Well, time for her say. Now, the difficulties faced by women and minorities, that is when they're trying to move to higher roles in hierarchy, and of course, in a male-dominated world, can't be ignored. The barriers are most often unwritten, and meaning that these individuals are more likely to be restricted from advancing through accepted norms and implicit biases rather than defined corporate policies. While her say continues to engage on how best to work and, of course, have a conversation where we can create a better space for everyone. And that's basically what we'll be doing this evening. Like we said, it's important that we have these uncomfortable conversations, and indeed an uncomfortable yet rather progressive conversation is what we're going to have this evening with none other than Wala Amakobe. I don't know whether I should refer to her as Daktari anymore, but she will tell us. You might have met her, you might have seen her, you know, just making rounds on social media, a bit of bashing as well as a bit of appreciation, and we want to understand just how has she managed to sail up to this level. First of all, the latest and the greatest Amakobe show. Thank you for creating time.
Thank you so much, Linda, for
Karibu
having
sana.
me. Asante.
And like I said, such a a calm soul, and then you ask yourself, how is she a conversationalist? Amakobe show.
Yes. So, Linda, I grew up being told to shush. Seventh born out of 8. Yeah. And generally, at our time, we were supposed to be seen, not to be heard. And so with that, there was a kind of suppression of my voice. And I think I got my outlet through writing. And the writing started attracting various audiences, and just writing about my lifestyle.
Hold it right there.
Yes.
Because you see, it sounds like it's so archaic, so ancient, that people can tell you, keep silent, do not talk. In what environment? Who are they telling who to keep silent, not to speak out?
Maybe in a family setup, especially, because we were a very large family. So it's not directly that you're told to keep quiet, but you really have to shout to be heard.
Right.
And that now became something that I was very conscious about. But I think also later in life, where you are supposed to behave in a certain way as a woman, which indirectly is actually telling you, speak when you need to speak. So I think once I got my voice through writing, then I just started speaking through my writing. And then guys were like, okay, why not make this a conversation that is, you know, live with an audience and people chip in. And that's how the Amakobe Wala show started. All
right. And so you allow us to be as candid and as you know, have an uncomfortable talk as possible.
Yeah.
Do you despise men?
No.
And you get that a lot, I'm sure.
I do. I do get called quite a number of labels. But what I usually tell people, it's not what you call me, it's what I respond to.
Yeah.
And I know that I do stand up for, let me put it, I'm an activist, and I'll speak up. And most of the time, the issues that need to be spoken about will be about women or will be about children. And so naturally, you'd find that people would tend to think that you are really leaning towards a certain gender. But it's just because the things that need to be spoken about are very heavy on the feminine side.
Okay. So one would want to understand, why would you drop a career that many would love to be, you know, to have taken, you know, a space that many would have loved to be in. You know, if you're going to talk about family, you know, every other family would want to have a daughter who is a doctor, you know, for, I don't know whether to call this a job or a title of a conversationalist.
Yeah. So I have not dropped my health sector, my health experience. So I'm a medical doctor by background, and I did my master's in infectious diseases. I've worked through various sectors within the health space. I guess in a way I've always tried to find my voice even in health.
All right.
And I believe that I drive social impact. That's what gives me joy. So social impact, even in health, for me came through working with populations rather than individual patients. And again, even in the health sector, I gave people the voice to say, you know what, I don't always have to see patients.
Right.
I can do many other things that are impactful in the other health sectors. And then you also notice that health cuts across.
Right.
So even in conversations, there's mental health. Like if I make you talk about your problem or make you feel that you are being heard, that in a way is affecting your health positively.
Right.
So I'm still a doctor.
You're still a doctor. Yeah.
I still pay my fee to the medical council, so I'm still registered, but I've never practiced. Or rather, maybe I've done it 6 months out of like 18 or 19 years. So.
Right. So what it is that you do is more fulfillment than chasing the bag.
Yes. So for me, it's about social impact. If I'm able to turn around or impact one life, then that gives me great satisfaction. And that's through my lifestyle, through my writing, through my talking. And so I have this slogan that says, be better, do better, live better. Because I think we are all in this earth for a purpose that's greater than our own being. So what is that? But for you to find it, you need to be whole in yourself. And because there's quite a number of things that affect us, that affect our health, then that's what I try to address. Yeah.
All right. So why is it that then you document? I know we're not here to talk about you, but it is because I noticed that most of the times, even as you give these teachings, you always want to refer to what it is that you experience as an individual. Why would you want to document your life, and more so on social media in such a space? And just how comfortable is it for you, for the people around you, and those ones that matter the most, perhaps your kids? Yeah.
So documenting my life, I've always been a writer. Right from, my dad was a literature teacher, so he taught us to love books. So I love reading books and I love writing. And I did realize that there's a space in which, especially when you're an adult, there's a way in which society as a whole dictates how you're supposed to live.
Right.
And I've always felt I'm different. Like what is this? What is this? I'm burning for something, but I'm being made to behave in a certain way.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that it's okay to be me, then I found my voice.
Okay.
And finding my voice, even in writing, it means, of course, being very vulnerable in the public sector, but I do it for me. And when I find that relief, when I find that freedom, then for me, it doesn't matter what others really think. Yeah. Of course, there are third parties around me. And right now, like my children are teenagers, so there's a lot of content that I do seek from them, but also just letting them know, because they are the first ones to know about things about myself. So people usually say, oh, they'll read about this when they grow up. And I'm like, my children already know what kind of lifestyle I live. We have these conversations. We've had conversations about very many uncomfortable topics right from the time they were young.
Yeah.
So I believe that they will not be, shocked in a way.
Yeah.
Because these are things that are common day conversations within our home.
Just how can you say that you write for you, the fulfillment is for you, when you have a lot of backing and a lot of people following you? I watch your show and I'm mesmerized at just how many people come down to just sit and listen to you.
Yeah.
Yet, largely you say it is about you first.
I think I ride on authenticity. And I think social media has put us in a place where we want to show our best. So we want to show our best photos, we want to show our best relationships, we want to show our best work. But I want to say that, life has ups and downs. And so by being vulnerable, I'm giving them the permission to know that it's okay not to be okay, to know that it's okay to seek professional help, to know that it's okay to celebrate little steps. And I think with that, perhaps this is the feedback I get, that authenticity is what draws people towards the conversations that we have. I also get opportunity to hear or to have other people writing to me anonymously, and they'd want their stories out there. They want some direction, so to speak, from the public. And that, again, also gives people permission to know, you know what, I'm not alone in this. There's someone else walking this journey. So some may be very silent, others would come in, very vocal. But all in all, I think with almost everything that I put down, there's a deliberate intention in terms of just ensuring that people are better, that they do better, and that they live better. Because as a whole, if I'm better and you are better, then together as a society, we are better.
And so one point you wake up and someone tells you, it is better to speak because the problem you shared is half solved. And the other person is telling you, what is the point of speaking out? People do not care. Everybody has their trouble and all that. In your own experience, what would be the best space to be at? You know, a space where you speak out your trouble and to the world, or a space where you choose to keep it to yourself because after all, the world does not care?
So that's the thing. What's the intention of you sharing? Is it because you're seeking affirmation, validation, or is it because you're truly, truly reaching out for input or for just different views? We are not relegating the role of personal introspection or the role of consultation with professionals, but sometimes just throwing out things out there. And I usually tell people, as I talk, as I keep on talking, then I am forming solutions. So just because I'm talking doesn't mean that I'm actually looking for answers. It means that I'm feeling, so my thoughts become clearer when I speak them out. And sometimes to people who are more analytical, it looks like there's a lot of babbling. But for me, as the words come out, as the feelings come out, then I find a pattern. I find, okay, this sounds this way. It sounded better maybe in my head. When it comes out, it sounds different. So with that, then I'm able to adjust. But I'd guess that I'd say, what's your intention of sharing? If you are seeking validation or external, basically external input without really saying this is for me, then I think then you have to think twice about that, because you can't sustain it. You can't always sustain being able to please people, to give people what they want to hear. But
in the same breath, you really need to be keen, especially when you have a major following and when you have people who pour their emotions to you. They pour their troubles and their concerns to you. They listen to you. Some of them look at you as though you're a role model, and some of them look at you as though you are a spoiler. And most of the men will tell you that, you know, Makobe is quite controversial, especially when it comes to the questions of marriage. What do you make of this, and how do you somehow, you know, slide and manage to swim with this kind of tide?
So again, with the territory, it comes barbs and bouquets come in the same breath. So I've learned that I try to sift through, let's say if a comment is criticism, I try to sift through the substance. And I usually tell people, if there's any abuse, if there's any insult or derogatory term, I disregard that whole comment. Like, you throw the baby with the bathwater. And so over time, I've seen quite a lot of maturity with the feedback or the comments within that space. And you know, you are not only educating yourself, you're educating other people. So there are times, of course, you would be like, okay, this perhaps gives me a different perspective. Is it something that I want to take in and reflect upon, or is it something I just want to say, yeah, it's a different worldview. It doesn't change my worldview, so and that's fine. You know, we don't always have to be aligned. What I take offense is when the labels start being a personal attack. So you leave the topic of the day and you start now saying, oh, you're doing that because you're divorced, you're saying this because you're a toxic feminist. You say, when that becomes a personal attack, I don't even engage. And that's because, you know, I'm here to talk about issues, not to talk about personalities.
But that is very crucial in this time and age. And that you get to witness people even taking their own lives because of the kind of bashing they get to experience online. Perhaps not everybody is as strong as you. I mean, what are some of the lessons that we pick in this, and just how do we manage to maneuver this? Because in future, we want to create a space where you would come and speak your mind on the social media space without having to worry that you're going to be judged, bashed, or, you know, experience trolling.
Yeah, sure. So one thing I'm very grateful, especially for the people who are on my timeline, is that they support. Because over time, maybe they've seen that I encourage positive discussions or positive criticism. And so they're very, very quick to also call out stuff. So I don't have to fight very many battles. I have people who will be like, you know what, this does not even make sense. So I think if we had one person standing up for someone who's being trolled, then we'd have a whole society that stands up against bullying and online trolls. And I say hurting people hurt others. So when I sometimes throw back to these people who, you know, constantly have this negative vibe, and I say, you know what, ask yourself why certain things are triggering you, certain things about another person's personal choices in lifestyle. Why do you feel like they're triggering, like you have to really come out and attack a person? Because it reflects a deeper issue with you yourself. And I guess over time, it will always, you can't have a very extremely safe space, but I've seen over time there's a whole army of people who are actually standing up against just online bullies and online trolls.
Slowly by slowly, for you, it is moving from that point where it is personal, then it's getting to a space where it is public, and it's getting to a space where it is professional, because with the show that you host, certainly it takes now a trajectory, a professional trajectory, if I may call it. I mean, how then do we create a balance in these three phases? Because all the three phases are different, you must admit, that you would choose to treat such a troll or something differently, you know, online as a personal or as an individual. And then again, there's one that, you know, you're entitled to answer to the public because you're officially a public figure. And then there's that professional aspect of it. And most of us actually get to go through this.
So it's hard to put them into silos. So I usually say I'm a bag of, I'm a mix of many emotions and facets. So I can't say that my role, let's say as a mother ends here and then my role as a doctor starts and this. I try to fuse everything. But then I also understand the audience and the context. For example, if you look at my Facebook profile, which is where I really thrive in, there's a lot of humor infused into it, because I think it's my space to have a light banter about life, because life is short, as I say. But when you go to, let's say, my LinkedIn profile, then you will hardly ever see any mention about, let's say, my sexual life or, you know, things that are maybe on a lighter tone. It will be more professional. It will be about my work. It will be about the things that inspire me. And then if you go to, let's say, the show, then for the show, what I've done is I'm removing myself from it. I want that space for other people. But there's still a link back to me, because the content that I'm creating in each of the topics that I've chosen for the season, I have a lived experience. So it's also not a far-fetched theoretical thing, but then the spotlight is not on me. I just facilitate the conversation. And I think that's what I want to drive more, that now I have walked naked so that you may be clothed. I'm giving you a stage to say, to share your story, to be heard.
Is this for women or for everybody?
It's for everybody.
Just how receptive are is the other gender in this case?
I may need to look at the analytics, but generally, because the first episode was on divorce and separation, then of course there was that thing of this thing is about women. But I think because I brought in a man to the panel, and I guess people are expecting this is going to be a bashing of men kind of space. So from the feedback, guys were pleasantly surprised that, you know what, it wasn't what we expected. And that's because their biases formed simply because of how we've been socialized, or what we expect, or how, like, people meet me and they're like, oh, I thought you're going to be very loud and, you know, a bigger person. And that's because of the bias that you see from my writing, and maybe because my writing can be raw and can be firm. And so you imagine that you're going to see. So when you see someone different, then you're like, oh, okay, that's. So I am, I don't want to say I can't control what other people perceive of me, but I'm very confident. I can confidently state that I talk about lifestyle issues.
Yeah.
So I give space to men, I give space to women, I give space to children's issues. Basically, I look at a holistic approach towards uncomfortable topics. Because we are in an African setup, most of these uncomfortable topics would naturally lean towards women. And that's the bias that comes. So if we were in a more liberated society, trust you me, it will be a very different perspective. Yeah.
How do we extend this beyond the talk? Because it's one thing to talk. It's one thing to hold conferences and say, you know, we have to shun gender-based violence, we have to shun the cut, we have to make sure that the women are empowered. It is another to go out there and get these women into spaces where they can speak out and get involved in empowering themselves and saying no to gender-based violence. You know, the men saying no to actually being violated by the women.
Yeah.
How do we get it from that space?
So within the ecosystem, you can't work alone. So I can't do all the work. I can maybe put in my sphere of influence, which is what I encourage people. What can you do within your sphere? So within my sphere, I guess I have the gift of tongue or the gift of writing. And so I use that writing to get people to the next step. And the next step would be people acknowledging that maybe there's something that's going on that needs attention. And from there, then there's that direction of, okay, these are the spaces or these are the resources that you can, you know, access in where you will be taken to the next level of support. So I'm usually very careful to let people know that this is not, it's not a replacement of professional support.
Okay.
And that it's okay. I think giving people permission to say that I'm not okay and I need help, that for me is my role.
That's good enough.
From there, then I give the resources, or people even come in and you'll be quite surprised that I learn a lot from the post. Sometimes I'm just doing a random bubble or rambling of something funny maybe I saw in traffic. And from that conversation, you can guys, you know, starting to educate or share knowledge about that particular topic. And so you have a lot of information. It becomes a rabbit hole of, you know, it can go on and on. Sometimes I even turn off my own notifications because it's 1,000 comments and it can be draining and it's a full-time job.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so but overall, I'd say I enjoy it because I get to learn, but I also get to share. Yeah.
All right, Dr. I want us to take a short break and come back, discuss just how best we can get men involved in the quest to uphold women's dignity. And like I said this evening, the show is not just about the women. It's basically speaking to the desires and the needs of those ones that are vulnerable in society, including the men that could be suffering in silence. But before I take that quick break, yes or no? Is the woman her own enemy?
No, the enemy is within.
So could it be the woman again who is within? All right, we can come back to that.
Yeah. Okay, it's pretty cold.
Welcome back to Her Say. On a set with me is Dr. Wala Amakobe, who's a conversationalist, as we just have this conversation about generally how we can empower the society and create a space that is safe for basically everyone. While we might say it's difficult to achieve that, we at least keep soldiering on. We at least keep trying, because after all, every life matters. So, Dr. It was at that point where, we are asking ourselves, are women our own, their own enemies and all that? Because then, why I'm asking this is because we look at the kind of bashing that sometimes you would go online and the people who are bashing you more are the fellow women. When you go to spaces where we have to front our very own, these are the very same, people that will want to pull you back. When we're even talking about the two-third gender rule, which we've not managed to achieve as a nation, amongst the people who will always try to, slow this process are the women. How then can we say that women are not their own enemy? And when you say the enemy is within, just what exactly do you mean?
So my reflection is that if you've sorted your within, meaning that you're you know yourself, you know what you bring to the table, you know the skills that you have, then the outside enemy does not affect you.
Yeah.
And putting it on the other side, the reason why many people seem to be attacking women is perhaps maybe they're not used to these things. Women are now breaking barriers. We are like the other time I was told I drive a manual car, so I'm very masculine. And I'm like, when am I supposed not to know how to drive a manual car? But I think even the people who are attacking, I wouldn't have numbers, but I think it depends on the topic. So some topics I see the responses are more from the men, especially topics to do with sexuality and liberation in the sexual space. At least on my personal profile, it's the men who'd call me all kinds of labels based on the sexual freedom. When it comes to things about, let's say, weight or body image, we may see a lot more of the women, saying, look at her hair, look at her, how she's dressed or whatnot. So I wouldn't categorically say that one gender is more than the other. I would say it's just people who are wounded. Because why would you feel the need to bring someone down? You get? And that's why I say the enemy is within. Even for them, the enemy is within. Because you are getting affected by a third party that has in no way affected how you're doing your life, you get? So, but when you raise, and this is some of the things that I try to do, I try to raise my children to be such confident children that in whatever circumstances they are in, whether it's in this context of patriarchy or in a context of a liberal world, they're very, very sure about who they are. Because when you're sure about who you are inside, it doesn't matter what someone tells you or calls you. Of course, they say sticks and stones, but what is it that drives you? And if whatever drives you is something that you believe in and it's a positive thing in terms of impact for yourself or for others, then they say kelele ya chura. Basically, those are a lot of noise out there. So learn to be deaf.
I hate to ask this, but I will ask all the same. And I hope that this is your account that I was looking at. That is on Twitter, yeah? And the follow-up of this story where some kids have not been with their mom.
Sure.
And that it disturbs you and it disturbs everybody else. Then one would want to say, in a space of divorce, and sometimes we understand that it has to happen, and it has happened anyway, where is the child left? Where are the children left? Where if it's going to be such a painful thing for a child to be away from the mother, is it not in equal measure as painful for them to be away from their dad?
Yeah. So parenting requires two people. The ideal setup.
Yeah.
Parenting requires two people, but those two people have to be whole. And that's why I tell people the child belongs to the state. And if the state deems that the rights of the child are being violated, then the state takes action. Part of that action may include withdrawal of that custodial relationship that you have. So I think that's the biggest thing that people don't understand, that at the center of it, it's the welfare of the child.
Right.
Now, if a child is taken from an environment where they're not able to access either of the parents, and that parent is not a threat to their lives, then their rights are being violated. And so in this particular case, then you find that you have separation of children from one parent, and this parent is not aware. For 3 years, this parent is not aware, the mother in this case, where these children are. We don't know even if these children are still alive. And that's because no one has any information. And so the state is now saying, you know what, let's look for these children. Let's produce these children. They're supposed to be produced in court. I think there's a lot of ignorance of the law in terms of divorce, in terms of Children's Act, in terms of basically the family setup. And because, again, we are in a space where generally our socialization has been that the mother is a better parent or the father is a better provider. When things are the opposite, then we find, okay, we don't know how to deal with a woman who's a better provider than a nurturer, or a man who's a better nurturer than a provider. So I think these are things that we have to have real discussions, because we are bringing up very wounded children. And that's coming from maybe the space where we feel, to get to you, to hurt you, I will use the children. Okay. But luckily, the state is there to protect the rights of the children. And when we were growing up, we were raised by the village. If you did something wrong, if it's your neighbor who saw you, they're going to rebuke you there and then. You get. We've lost that. And so we find a lot of violation of the rights of children happening simply because someone wants to say, it's not my business. And I think for me, I want to speak about these things. If I say within my right, I have a space to vocalize or to bring to light an injustice, then I will do that. Yeah, so if someone else is in a space where they're able to link a child who's suffering to maybe a care facility, then let them do that. So let's all play our part to ensure that we are raising a generation that's not wounded. And
that's the pressure today, because then in as much as we would say that our times or the times back, proper times in the sense of how we get to raise generations, in the sense of how we behaved back then. Reality is that this is a different generation. Times have changed. How do we forge forward without having to refer to what it is that was done then and that is not being done right now? Because truth is that you would stay with someone for 5 years without knowing their face. This is your neighbor. You don't get to know them. You don't get to meet them and all that. And even if you meet, you do not even say hi. So how do we progressively move on with the kind of generation that we're in today without having to worry about what happened in the past and still get it right?
So I'd say perhaps adapting to certain things. For example, we're in a digital phase. So you may not be able to, let's say, interfere, quote unquote, but you may know that there's a hotline that you can call and call for help and not have a direct link. We may be in a space where roles are changing, where we are having our children being raised by third parties simply because both of parents maybe need to fend. And we want to see, how do we empower now this third party? So it's about just adapting to the context, but never losing that core thing, which is the rights and the upbringing, basically the nurturing of that child. Because in health, and now I'm putting on my medical hat, we call it the first 1,000 days. A lot happens in that first 1,000 days that will determine the kind of adult we have. So if we have children who have not been nurtured well, who are not getting a responsive, caring home, who are not getting enough nutrition, who are not getting enough socialization, that first 1,000 days can make or break a generation. And we there's a lot of effort to ensure that the foundation of a child is as holistic and as enriching as possible, because science has shown that a damaged, quote-unquote, child becomes a damaged adult. So we have the responsibility as a society and individually to play our part to ensure that children get the best. Set aside your differences. I've been divorced maybe 8 years or so. And one thing that I've never lost sight of is that my relationship with the father of my children should not affect his relationship with the children.
Are you in terms? Do they?
They do interact.
They interact.
Yes,
yeah,
they do interact in their own space.
All right.
And that they are able to create their own impression of whatever happened. But it should not come from me that I am the one blocking access to a father. And I have a divorce support group. And in that group, you know, people come in with a lot of maybe different seasons, but the ones who are very raw from separation come in with a lot of anger and, you know, this happened to me and I'm not giving them access, or they're not providing, so I'll not give them access. And one of the things we've helped them learn is that your relationship with the spouse should not affect their relationship, his or hers, with the children.
Well, this is becoming quite common, divorce cases, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know how we want to look at it. How do we address it without appearing as though we are glorifying it? Because I'm sure you've also as well received a lot of bashing to appear as though you're saying, you know what, it is not working day one, please step out. It's not going to work day two.
Yeah, I actually have a hashtag Single Lives Matter, and that was a very deliberate hashtag. And that came from the stigmatization of someone who's gone through divorce and separation, and especially for me as a woman, because even leadership positions in certain religious circles, you're not going to be given. You are told you're going to snatch someone's husband if you keep on talking to my husband. Or you are like, oh, you are misleading our young girls or whatever. And because of that, I am in fact, my status, the first thing I'll say is I'm a divorcee. And I want to get it out of the way. Even in the show, I said that's the first topic. Because it will always come as a tag. So let's just get it over and done with.
Has it helped? Has it helped? Has it helped? Because most of the women here would want to say, okay, and most of them would choose not to speak about this at all until somebody else discovers that. So is it a safe thing or a safeguard to begin by, you know, putting that mark on your head that A and B, you are dealing with a divorcee? Let's proceed.
I would say it helps to, like, this is me.
Okay.
Yeah,
take it
because when it comes later in certain times, you see someone recoiling and someone changing their attitude. So I'm like, I want to know you when you know that I'm a divorcee. How will you treat me? How will you accept me? And because it's gonna be there, it's out in public. It's a government terminology of my relationship status. It does not define me as a person.
How ugly is it for women compared to men? Because if it's going to be a divorcee conversation, then even the men have divorced. So how ugly is it for
I can't speak for men, but
I am assuming that
they're there.
Men.
So what I've tended to see is that men don't get into the details of what led to the divorce and separation for many of them, but they still bear the pain. And they bear, because it's a broken relationship. And it's a broken relationship means something broke anyway. It is a grief process. And I tell people, grieve, but don't get stuck in one cycle of the grief. So if it's raw, those emotions will be raw, and you have to acknowledge, and there's no shortcut. You have to go through those emotions. Because we say, no one gets into marriage to get divorced. So it sometimes reflects to you as a failure, and especially if you're someone who succeeds in many things, like I succeed in many things, and then this didn't succeed for quote unquote. You question yourself. You're like, so why didn't it go as planned. Yes,
yeah.
And that questioning can give you answers, or sometimes it cannot give you answers. And sometimes you have to be also very real with yourself and say, what did you contribute to it? Because it takes two to tango. And so it's very easy to point one finger and four fingers are pointing towards you. So what I've had to practice is to reflect on what did I bring, what did I contribute to it.
So why would you want to know how you contributed? Because you want to step into another relationship, or just to know for the sake of knowing it so you can teach your children not to do that? Or what exactly?
I think to understand, for me it was to understand myself better.
Okay.
Because I thought I did put in my best.
Your best.
Yeah, but it didn't work out. So what was it? And it was very easy to say this and this and this other person did. But I played a part. I was an enabler, a very big enabler. And because if I don't address that enabling bit, I will get into another relationship with that same thing of, stretching, not creating proper boundaries, stretching my grace and whatnot.
Are you in another? I know we'll all assume but we are in this conversation, so I am dealing with people who do not know you. Are you in another? Are you planning to get to another, or what?
Oh, I jumped into others very soon.
Okay.
After. Yeah, I did not waste time.
Rebounds?
Not really. It was because I could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the prescription of you should wait, you should do.
Nah.
It's important to be whole, because you'll create another damaged human being with your baggage. But I don't think there's a prescriptive time period where you'd say, okay, after 3 years, maybe perhaps. There are guys who would never even go back to relationships, and that's fine also. So I think my view is that I did it my way, and for me, it works for me. There's someone who'd be like, you know what, let me raise my children. When the children are done, then I can see what's out there. That's also fine for them. So do what works for you, and let not anyone tell you that this is the way and you should follow it. I say, do you, the world will adjust. Because people will talk. They will talk whether you're in, whether you're out, whether you're doing this or not. So you do you.
So how do we encourage people to divorce if it is messy and noisy in there, without appearing as though we are glorifying it again, I ask?
So let me say this. Divorce is not a horrible thing in terms of that it's the condemnation of marriage.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people go wrong. Divorce is actually an option towards happiness. It's a painful option, but it's an option.
Towards happiness. Underline that.
Yeah.
Happiness. So imagine.
So I usually tell people, are you happy? When you look into the mirror, what's staring back at you?
Can you be happy in that process? Maybe.
No. I'm saying in terms of the situation, like evaluating whether to get divorced or not. Because I think we are not ready to face ourselves and to face the truth. And I can tell you, I can pick up from, let's say, people who are friends, in terms of what they post, I can pick up when someone is hurting but they're putting a mask. Because I did it, and I did it very well. In fact, people got shocked. They're like, what? What happened? You are the... You are... Goals. So that mask, we've learned to really put that mask on. And so I tell people, in the silence of your space, look through your eyes. Are your eyes, is there still the soul inside? Because once that is taken, it doesn't matter whether you stay, whether you will be dead.
But just why? And I know I'll be contradicting myself by asking this. Why is it that we go back to the old days? Our mothers, they never used to divorce just like that. They will never wake up and say, I am going and gone and all that. Why is it that it looks like the empowered woman appears to always be ready to step out of this marriage? And I know we have said we want to approach these matters, progressively without having to look at what played out behind. But it's a reality.
So it's a fallacy that our mothers were happy.
Is it? Okay, they were not happy?
Yes.
Maybe they just never stepped out. Why is it that we find
maybe they didn't have a Makove to give them the confidence to step out. But I think in terms of economic, there was a lot of economic power play in our mother's time. There was also the societal pressure. And I would say also there were, there are things that may have been done that, we have media now, and media brings up stories. So like someone said the other day, are we seeing more cancer patients? It may be, but it may not be, because it may be that now there are more platforms to share those stories, yes, or for people to get diagnosis, so we hear. And so the fallacy that our mothers were more tolerable to marriage, I think that's born out of the circumstances at that time. And I'm speaking this from a personal relationship that I had with my mother. When my marriage broke down, I went home for 2 weeks without my children. And I had a candid conversation with her, and she bore her story. And it was very different from what I knew as her mother. Now, it was now a woman-to-woman talk. And I guess...
The untold story.
The untold story. But she stuck to the end. She unfortunately passed on last year. But she was not a divorcee. But that doesn't mean that she was happy, you get? And that she put up with a lot of things. So just because someone does a divorce doesn't mean that they're happy.
Okay, so the girl today is just bold enough to
choose them.
And even the man.
Yeah, and the man,
even the man
yes,
as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know we wanted to talk about just how we can incorporate the men, to make sure that they're part and parcel of this conversation of empowering the women. But I realize of importance would be, just how do we get to empower in general the vulnerables of society today, or in society today, and women being included in this case?
So the vulnerability starts with us acknowledging that there are vulnerable populations there. That someone, like a man who's being battered, is a very vulnerable person. But we are not talking much about it.
Neither do they speak out.
Yeah, neither do they. Because once they speak out, and I've had a couple of people reaching out and sharing their stories as men, and you just say there's no mercy. Like people come out and tear them apart, or they say, you're not man enough. Why would you even share such a thing? And that makes people recoil, because they peeped out. It's like a tortoise. They put their head out, and then you were all here with our blows and whatnot. So how can we make this person who is a survivor, because we don't call them victims, a survivor, feel that their story is valid and their story is heard? And I think these are the spaces that some of us are creating, that I may not understand, but I want to let you know that you've been heard. So the more we create spaces where people feel heard, the more people say, okay, I can talk about this, I can talk about, it happened to me, it is real, it is what I went through, but I'm not getting stuck here, that there is a solution, or there are resources that I can reach out to. But as long as that person doesn't feel heard, and I'm saying this because the other day I put up a post about financial abuse in intimate relationships, and people said,
why?
You have so much money, why are you doing this? Why can't you see? The moment you start doubting that my story is real, I will not give you any more information. Yeah, I'll just coil back, because I say, is it worth sharing? No. You won't believe me anyway. So we are creating more recluses. So how do we make safe spaces for people to open up? And we are able to understand. And then also understanding that one person's journey is not another. And that it doesn't have to follow a certain path, because people will tell you, stop mourning. I mean, why are you talking about your divorce? It was 8 years ago. This is my journey. I can talk about it up to 100 years. Don't prescribe. And I think that's part of coaching and mentorship. You don't prescribe to someone, listen, and then find a way of guiding them.
That's good. The woman who is appreciated and bashed in equal measures, especially when it comes to this talk of divorce. There's so much that we can talk about, but then again, time would not allow us. Daktari, in less than a minute, what would be your word to the people who are watching us tonight?
My word would be, listen. Listen to what is not being spoken. And I think if we all had that empathy within us, the world would be a much better place. But for you to listen or to hear, you yourself need to be in a space where you stripped yourself of the bias that comes with your socialization, your education, your interactions, and you're able to open possibilities of, this can actually happen. Because some people don't believe some stories.
Yeah.
That's because they've never fathomed that a situation like that can occur. So strip yourself of biasness, listen, so that we are able to help others.
Right. Dr. We do not close without me telling you congratulations on the Amakove Wala show. It's one of the dreams of very many girls and very many women and very many journalists. One that is quite difficult to patch up. And because you've done it, keep it at it.
Asante sana. And you're the first person to pronounce my name right.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe I shouldn't say it again.
No.
Most of the people say Amakove.
Yeah, Amakove, Kovs, Amakov. So you pronounce it the Luya way.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And as well, thank you so much for watching her say. And for the immense feedback. I mean, we could not go through all this, but then again, we say that it's great that you could join us. And as well, Dr. thank you for joining us this evening. We're looking forward to have more and more of these conversations. Just get to engage those ones that are making change in society, but above all, being part of that change. So see you again tomorrow. And we'll also have a very, very important discussion. I won't be telling you it's about what, but you check our socials at TV47K.